Hi everyone, it looks like the numbers of people joining us have stabilised now, so we'll just get started. So welcome to our Meet the Pioneers Mull Marine Special. I'm Lindsay Chambers, I'm the Development Manager at Community Land Scotland. And this is the latest in our series of Meet the Pioneers events where we hear from practitioners about their experiences of developing and owning assets. We have a series of Meet the Pioneers on our YouTube channel across a really broad range of subjects, from renewables to working with young people, so feel free to go and look at those. And this event today will also be recorded and will be appearing on that YouTube channel, so you don't have to take copious notes if you want to watch it again. So today joining us we have Brian Swinbanks from Tobermory Harbour Association, who's standing in for his colleague Anne Fraser. We have Callie Fleming from Mull and Iona Community Trust, and will be joined in the Q&A section by her colleague Moray Finch. And we also have Morven Gibson from Southwest Mull and Iona Development. So I will just run you through some of the housekeeping rules for today's session. The session will end at 3:30 at the latest, depending on how much chat we get going in the Q&A section. If you want to ask any questions, use the Q&A function. It just makes it easier for us when we're passing the questions on to the speakers if they're all in one place. We'll have the Q&A session after the three presentations are finished, but feel free to put your questions in there when you think of them. And if there's questions you want to ask to a particular person, just let us know and we'll direct them to that person. Captions are available during the session, which you can turn on at the bottom of your screen. You can use the chat function to comment and network with other people. Everyone in the session will be able to see the chat at the bottom of the screen. My colleague Meg is running the technical support, and she's running the webinar in the background. So if you're having any technical issues, just message Meg in the chat and she will respond to you and try and help you out with that. So I'll get straight into the session now. So first up we have Brian Swinbanks from Tobermory Harbour Association. So I'll hand over to Brian just now. Thank you.
Hi folks, welcome. My name is Brian Swinbanks and I'm the chair of Tobermory Harbour Association. And I'm standing in for my colleague, our CEO, Anne Fraser, who unfortunately has had to step back. I think we've got a wee surge in the community here. So that's us. So first slide that we've got up here shows Tobermory from an aerial view, and I don't see myself on screen, but the video is showing that I'm being seen. So I assume I'm being seen by everybody, okay? So here we are, and welcome to Tobermory Harbour. Now, as we all know, it's one of the most recognisable and historic harbours in Scotland. Founded as a fishing port, 1800, and actually we're just researching all the ships that came and went from Tobermory. And I'm only up to 1842, and I've got thousands of ships that came in and out of Tobermory. So it's a really interesting exercise. So we are now back to the present day, and Tobermory Harbour Association is a company-led social enterprise, and it's been continuously involved in the bay and managing the bay since 1983. We're a pressure group initially, pushing the local authority to do things, and when we learned that that didn't always happen, we then started to become a company which could look after the assets which we would put in. So we then became a harbour authority in 2017, responsible to the community through an elected board of local directors. The THA objectives are to manage the harbour safely and deliver community gain. Gain through an increased number of visitors, employment opportunities, and sustainable economic growth to support local business. We really do believe in making profits to plough back into the business to enable and help the community. Now the THA owns and manages, and you can see the list up there on the first slide, 110 moorings, 50 pontoon berths, and we get nearly 10,000 boat nights on our pontoons. We have up to 41 cruise ships, and I think we've got maybe about 30 already booked in for this year. We have commercial berthing and high fuel delivery, and this is fairly new to us. We've just put in new breakwater pontoons actually, because we're trying to move from being seasonal tourism business to an all year round business, supporting the aquaculture industry and the inshore commercial fleets. We run public toilets, the only public toilets, the showers, the laundry facilities, and that's one of the most expensive buildings, I think, in the West, to run toilets, but actually it was one way to make it pay was to put a lot of offices and other facilities in the building, which cross-subsidize the management, the cleaning, the running of the toilets. We have letting spaces, as I've said, offices for storage, Europe's first catch and release aquarium, and we are a harbour authority, as it says, and pre-COVID, the turnover was. So we'll come to that in a minute. So that's us managing the harbour. That's our initial list, right? So we measure the success on the benefit of our activities and our assets to provide for the local community. And to deliver, we need sustainable businesses. So 2019 was our best ever year, and the operating income was about 362 on Anne's sheets here. Actually, I'm virtually reading what Anne wrote. I've modified it slightly, but obviously she just stepped out this morning, okay? So the income was up across our business. This activity, according to ECOS, pumps almost £3 million into the local economy and supports upwards of 50 to 60 local jobs. 2020 was supposed to be the year of the coast and waters, and we were expecting even better results until COVID hit. And that's a really big problem. So it's been incredibly difficult 2 years for all of us. 70% of our trading income was reliant on tourism. We lost it all. However, we have worked hard to diversify and provide all year round facilities with small commercial boats coming in throughout the whole year. And this has actually kept us afloat throughout this difficult time, okay? For inshore commercial and the local aquaculture industry. And we're expecting the financial year recovery of 75% on 2019-2020 figures. And we're that was last year, let's call it last year's figures. And we're hopeful that 2022 will get us back to 100% recovery and beyond. Now, Tobermory's role as a hub port encourages outward travel to further ports. And I think you'll be hearing from Moray further, sending people around to Ulva Ferry and things like that, and to many other small ports throughout the north and northwest. Tobermory is a stop-off position for many of the boats that are sailing throughout the summer and into the autumn. And we're trying to extend the season to generate wealth and spread it out right across the west coast. The THA also helps to support activities other than remote and rural coastal villages that will generate further economic benefits. So at that local level, THA generates, according to Anne's figures here, 1.5 million gross annual GVA. And I think she means their gross value added. I'm not exactly sure about that. That's a figure that she's put down, right? So it sounds very good to me, okay? How did we get here? Can we have slide 2 up, please, okay? Right, we started way back in '83, as I said, as a pressure group. And then we started to put in visitor moorings. And then we got approvals obtained to create a clear fairway, working with the Fishermen's Association. And we always work in partnership with other people. The Latechik car park was completed in 1995-96. And you'll see there that on the top pictures on the right-hand side is the Latechik car park that I'm talking about with the harbour building. That's the harbour building, the white one with the round tower. And if you look to the left-hand picture on the top, you can see the same Latechik with the pier on the left-hand side is where that Latechik development is, which was just sea and seabed in those way back in '83. So in 1996, the Latechik car park was completed by the then Strathclyde Local Authority and the THA being totally involved in that. In 1999, moorings were reorganized, 2021, a small landing stage, and 2003, an incorporated company, 2004, an extension of the pontoons, 20 berth pontoons, which actually helped to give us the first real incomes coming in once we got moorings and pontoons. So we can take that income and plow it back into obviously having staff, having people who collect the money, having people administer the money. The whole team now is anything from 8 in the winter to up to 14 in the summer. And in 2006, THA developed new sewage systems working with West of Scotland Water, which actually goes across the bay and goes up to facultative lagoons at the top of the town. So previously, where the whole sewage system of Tobermory actually exited straight into the bay, I'm sorry to say, up to 5,000 visitors straight into the bay, not long ago now, it now goes up to a very good system, a well-organized system by Scottish Water Solutions, okay? And in 2008, we started purchasing more land around the bay. And in fact, actually, I think it was the Crown Estate who once said to me that actually the seabed is just land covered with water. So we've worked very closely with them on some of our assets there. Can we have the next slide up, please? Which brings us right up then to 2014, when we opened our Mull Aquarium, which is really interesting. I see Anne's got the word COVID in there. I can't quite see why that comes in. But anyway, we now welcome over 14,000 visitors per annum, including tourists, local residents, educational establishments and clubs. We're a company freshening up the space for 2022 season and diversifying by developing an app which provide new income streams to encourage visitors and locals to engage with the coastal environment. So I think it's an app that works with the aquarium, where you can go out and find creatures and work around the environment of Mull, okay? Enhancing outdoor tourism, nature-based education, and ever-growing interest in Mull's habitat and marine environments through the latest digital capabilities. This will give the aquarium more flexibility if COVID restrictions return, and give the opportunities for all weather, all year-round income generation. Now, in 2017, as a harbour, and we're talking about harbours and marine, we were granted the Harbour Empowerment Order by the Scottish Government Ministers. And in fact, we are still one of only two, I think, harbour authorities run and managed by the community. So it was approved the day that they launched the Islands Bill, which I think will be interesting to many of you, okay? There are only two community harbour authorities, which I've already said. I think it's Loch Boysdale, actually, the other one. Well, that's the one I'm quoting from. Others may know of others, right? As a statutory harbour authority, THA are responsible for the safety management, conservancy of Tobermory Bay on behalf of the members, the stakeholders, and the local community. As a harbour authority, we need to comply with Port Marine Safety Code, and this has been a really difficult one for us, actually. We thought we would step up, we would become the harbour authority that would secure the bay and all its assets in perpetuity for the community. What actually happens is, and many people told us, that once you become a harbour authority, with it comes awesome, and I mean awesome, responsibility. We have had inquiries into cruise liners that hit rocks, not even in Tobermory Bay, way outside Tobermory Bay in the Sound of Mull, but we have been engaged and brought into these inquiries. And it does come with all kinds of problems and health and safety and audits that have to go on of everything you do, right? So we are talking about an up-to-date safety management system, oil spill response plans, risk assessments, drills, exercises, and having competent staff training to run local port services and monitor all of the yachts and boats and commercial traffic that's coming in at all times. So we engage regularly with all of our stakeholders in the bay, including RNLI, Maritime Coast Guard Agency, CMAL, CalMac, local fishing, mooring holders, and other bay users. We hold Port Marine user group meetings. They're called PUG meetings. Great, isn't it? It becomes PUG. We also have informal meetings between, obviously, many of our stakeholders, okay? There's lots of responsibility, but we now have the power to protect the bay and its environment for generations to come for the people of Tobermory and Mull. More recently, we've been working on projects to diversify, and we've received over £1 million in grant funding over the last 2 years. So while COVID was going on, we were putting in new pontoon breakwaters, which we put 2 in. We were putting in a new fuel system. So these projects included over 425 of an infrastructure project to install an 80-metre breakwater, provide all tidal deep water berthing for fishing and agriculture. And we're also working with a local team now who are keen to put freshwater tanks in the bay for washing fish to deal with this very invasive problem of sea lice on salmon. And we're hoping that we can help people to solve some of this, because the aquaculture industry is very pertinent to the West Coast. It's pertinent to Scotland. It's huge, as I hear. Actually, the salmon industry was on the news again this morning, as the number of salmon being produced is still going up. But they have great problems to deal with, and we're trying our best to help them there. Last year, we installed a new commercial fuel berth facility extending to our south pontoon, and installed a new hammerhead to incorporate larger vessels, which means that all of our operators can hopefully benefit from a longer season and even all the year-round activity. But we do get horrendous winds here, as all of you do who are involved in ports and things like that. It is difficult. It is difficult to give safety without actually having hard piers and breakwaters, but floating piers and breakwaters give about 80% protection, but a lot of the wind obviously comes over them and gets into the infrastructure. And just a sideline on that before we go to the next slide and before I leave that marine infrastructure, anybody moving into marine infrastructure, please remember, recognize that actually the infrastructure has to be serviced. All of the chains, all of the anchors on the seabed, it may cost you 100, 200, 300, 400,000 to put it in at the time, but you will have very large bills as you move forward actually on servicing. We are right now replacing 2 of the original chains for our original pontoons that went in. That alone is costing £24,000 to do right now. So prices are going up and you need to look very closely at how you can generate profits to afford to maintain and keep this infrastructure. It's wonderful infrastructure, it can bring in income, but it will have to be maintained. Can I have my next slide, please? Okay, getting directly on to purchases and land. And we purchased the orange area, the Solum, from Crown Estate Scotland. And actually, this brings us full circle because we obviously got help from the Scottish Land Fund to do that. And it is the old seabed under the Lakeship car park, which we talked about earlier as having been built between Strathclyde and the Tobermory Harbour Association. So now we actually become the landlords of the local authority. It gives me great pleasure to say that actually, but we are now the landlords of Argyll and Bute Council. We own the Solum underneath the car park that they manage and run and own the surface and the surface blocks and the signage and everything else like that. So it gives us a huge stake. And this is quite important for anybody to realize that actually often reclaimed land, seamed land, land that once belonged to the Crown Estate is an asset that can give you quite a lot of local power insofar as when the council wants to talk about charging, when it wants to talk about bringing in TROs, you are involved in that process. We are a stakeholder in that process. So we've had a very good and long-standing relationship with our external stakeholders, including Argyll and Bute and the Crown Estate, with a variety of tenancy agreements and local management agreements over the years. So securing this funding in 2019 and purchased the asset this last year. This is this actual asset I'm talking about, actually the Solum of the car park. This now means, and I think it's just repeating what I've said, actually, it is just repeating, Anne has written down what I actually just said. So can I have number 5, please? Slide 5, please. Right, and I'm moving on slightly to the future here. This is an asset that we have also just purchased with wonderful help from yourselves and from others. This is the old assets. It's called Arras Park Waterfront. It was a series of buildings that were built by the historic estate, which was called Drumfin Estate, back in 1840, 1842. And they had a sawmill, and they also had this building, which is now rendered in concrete, which was converted into a hatchery way back in the 70s and 80s by a pioneer fish farmer, Mr. Hugh Goldie. And we've taken that over. And on the waterfront side, there is a historic old pier. You can see that below with the yachts just above it. And there was also things like swimming clubs and people boating and everything off these assets. Now, these assets, which are a liability, are also a great future asset because so many people now are turning to wild swimming, paddleboarding, canoeing, outdoor recreation. And as the harbour gets more and more busy, we will be able to move that activity safely over to Arras, which will give safety to these people when in the water, when they're in swimming, and they'll not be swimming through boats and in amongst very heavy plant and equipment moving around. So there is a responsibility to the harbour to offer somewhere else for these activities to take place. And Arras is that place. And we've now bought it. And even today, actually, I had a builder on site looking at how we can restore this historic pier, how we can restore the historic quay, how we can restore a small slipway for boats to go up and down. So we were over there this morning. So can we have the next slide, please? Which is slide 6. And also the building that you've just seen, which was rendered in concrete, we are going to take the center section, which is actually the old historic stone building. We're going to build extensions on each end. We'll put in a sort of galley, which will provide drinks, hot drinks, pop-up cafe. And at both ends, then we will have seating, and we will have a small lecture theatre, and we will also have showers and toilets just in front of the gentleman that's walking down, where it's a sort of black render behind. And that will give us a very low-level entry into Aris Park, with possibly an electric water taxi running from the pontoons across to Aris, because Aris it's loved by the community. It's used for walking, for outdoor recreation. It was a huge asset throughout the whole COVID, where many, many people go over there and walk. And one thing that we don't want to do with our future is spoil something that is so precious to the community. So in this case, we're stepping forward with something which is not a piece of industry. It's something that is loved and cherished moving forward. So that's where we're going to go forward with that. So as I said, if I move back to here, we're conducting a feasibility study also on a micro turbine. There are 2 small rivers there. There's the actual Aris River, which we're looking at, and there's a small river running next to the facility, which something could be done on. So we're scoping out the idea of moving our aquarium as well in the future. So I'm going to move on now to almost my final slide, please, if I could. Right, because where we're moving now is the future. So we're looking at moving the aquarium, possibly even a float. They've requested, you know, that it's if they can get on the water, they can get better access to clean water for the creatures, which is better for their living and their environment and everything else like that. So that would create a bespoke, innovative, enhanced experience, which would possibly put in between the pontoons. We're also building a new business plan, a master plan for the harbour to include environmental and net zero strategy for the next phase of development for the THA and this iconic and historic hub port harbour. Okay, that's me really. I'm going to wind up and I'm going to say thanks to all. I'm sorry that Anne was unable to present. You got a flavour of Anne's talk with a few interjections by me. It may have sounded muddled, but we were sort of throwing it together late this morning when Anne had to bow out. Now, I'm just going to make one comment actually for all of you. Everybody needs great staff, and we have excellent staff at the THA, and staff are key to delivering for the community. Ideas, everybody, are really easy, but project delivery and sound management is key to empowering Scotland's communities. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you, Brian. Out.
That was both very interesting and coherent, and just showed what a difference THA is making economically, environmentally and socially to Tobermory. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you later. I'm now going to hand on to Callie Fleming from Mull and Iona Community Trust, who's going to tell us about the pontoon in Ulva Ferry. Over to you, Callie.
Let's get set up. Right. Hi there, everybody. Can you see that? Okay, is that sharing?
That looks perfect, Callie.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Callie Fleming, Ulva Ferry Pontoon and Shore Facilities Development Officer, working for Mull and Iona Community Trust, and I'm going to tell you about our small pontoon development in northwest Mull at Ulva Ferry. Next. Technical glitch. There we go. Yeah. I'll start with going back to 2010, and Ulva School in northwest Mull was threatened with closure. The school roll had dropped to just 4, and along with 24 other schools in Argyll, The Ulva School Parent Council formed USCA, which is Ulva School Community Association, to have a stronger voice. And after an arduous campaign, it resulted in the council, the Argyll Council, withdrawing their plans and the schools remaining open. With all the publicity and awareness, HIE identified Ulva Ferry as a fragile area and included it in their Growth at the Edge programme. A local development officer position was created with MICT as the anchor organisation working with USCA. Mull and Iona are amongst the most deprived communities in the UK, within the top 1% most deprived in terms of access to services in Scotland. And Ulva Ferry is one of the most remote communities on Mull. In 2011, the two part-time LDOs, local development officers, started a visioning exercise with the local community, and an extensive community consultation resulted in a community plan being delivered for the area. The key priorities were identified as affordable housing, community transport, and a waterfront development to improve economic opportunity in the area. The steering group met regularly to discuss the project and consulted widely with different parts of the community: marine users, tour operators, fishermen, local residents and visitors, to assess the problems and look at potential solutions. Meetings were held regularly at the school, and often they were billed as social events, and we worked with the various other projects, housing, community transport and pontoon development to ensure a large turnout. As a result of these meetings, a phased development of pontoon, improved car parking and a shore facilities building was proposed. Also at this time, extensive research was undertaken into tourism and marine tourism in Scotland. Funding was sought for the project in 2013, and in early 2014 we were lucky enough to secure £452,000 from the Coastal Communities Fund, which was distributing Crown Estate revenue and administered by Big Lottery. Now, funding included all the necessary surveys, seabed surveys such as on the screen at the moment, site topographic survey, hydrological survey, wave height surveys, etc. Various consents and licenses were sought: planning, Marine Scotland, SEPA, etc. And all statutory organisations and stakeholders were consulted extensively: MCA, Northern Lighthouse Board, SSE, Marine Scotland, etc. In 2015, a tender was issued for a marine civil engineer to evaluate site conditions, produce tender docs, documents and designs, and evaluate tenders for design and build. Art Henderson won the tender to carry out this work. Gale Force Engineering then secured the contract to design and manufacture the pontoon. There were all sorts of changes with the exact location, delays due to the underwater power cable to Ulva, liaising with SSE and fishermen on the best location to obviously avoid any sandbanks and ensure safe passage for all. So there was numerous meetings with stakeholders on all aspects of the project during this period. Once the layout was finalised, the planning, Marine Scotland licence and Crown Estate lease were finalised, and all consents were in place, and site work was able to commence in April 2016. So here you can see various activities taking place. Torresey Sandpit Limited, TSL, were shuttering, pouring concrete in difficult situations, often in a rising tide situation. Various subcontractors were involved, such as Northwest Marine. You can see here bringing the tower and the walkway by their barge, and we used small local contractors, Kangley Construction here, building the small car park. Drilling for the borehole was interesting. The borehole for the water supply was over a mile away up in a boggy hillside. And the first attempt, after 60 meters, we reached saline water. Eventually we found another location at, I think, 90 meters, found lovely clear water. And it was quite a convoluted process involving directors rolling the water pipe for over a mile up the hill. Everybody was very hands-on. So Northwest Marine and Gale Force completed the main build in July 2016. And shortly after that, we had our first visitors, the boat Rana from Inverness visiting the pontoon. And after that, we began to have a number of boats during July and August. And we had our official opening on 26th of August 2016. And this was a great success. The lifeboat was there, a lot of activities, and we had the oldest resident in the community, the lovely Jeannie McCall, and the youngest, Bruce Cutlet, cutting the ribbon. The day was a great success, and we had all sorts of activities, such as the Mull Gaelic Choir. There's a lifeboat there, Ben Moore in the background. And of course, our local young pirates were enjoying the pirate theme of the day. Over the winter or in autumn, the MIC team of directors, Chris Baker, Sandy Brunton, and pontoon manager, Mark Millward, and general manager, Murray Finch, were all hands-on to help put all the utilities in. And here they are rolling this pipe a mile up the hill to the borehole. At this stage, the marine diesel was installed. The fuel system has a 10,000 gallon bunded tank, which feeds via a twin wall pipe to this, as you can see here, the Pumptronic dispenser system on the pontoon. And this is controlled by a chip and pin system with a back office system to provide management reports. It's pretty important, or really important, that everything needs to be properly specified for marine environment, as we had some problems with the roller doors. The project has provided a part-time job with the pontoon manager, and it's also provided relief staff opportunities, with Stacey here. Boats started visiting from all over the world, this one from America, the Francis B, right down to tiny day boats and single-handers. And of course, the tour operators who take visitors to Staffa, Treshin Isles, and the various Sea Eagle tours. The local restaurants have benefited, and here's a crew on their way to a new restaurant which was opened up. The lady had confidence that she would get pontoon business, and this prompted her to be able to open her restaurant, and she's now actually building bigger premises. Our other project, the Ulva Ferry Community Transport Programme, transports crew and visitors to various restaurants and businesses in the area, and there's a happy crew dining at the Ballygowan restaurant. So whilst work continued over the winter to complete the pontoon development, a successful application to the Scottish Land Fund allowed us to undertake a feasibility study into the next phases of improved car parking and a shore facilities building. Community consultants, Community Enterprise, were commissioned to undertake further research, community consultation and options appraisal. You can see here consultant Julie McWhirter undertaking an event and undertook surveys and stakeholder consultation. Thornwyness architects were commissioned to undertake preliminary design work and site appraisals. Various options were proposed for the development. This is one of the earlier designs, which was put together in 2018 for a multifunction space. It actually had bunk rooms in it at that time, showers, toilets, laundrette, kitchenette, and quite a large building. Work moved on as well with the traffic management plan, which was prepared, and Thornwinus designed the new improved car parking layout for 120 cars. At this time, a second application to the Scottish Land Fund in 2018 enabled us to purchase all of this area, which was about 2.4 acres, for development. And an application to the Rural Tourism Infrastructure Fund raised £250,000 for the 2 car parks. You can see here, larger one on the Ulva car park, 3 motorhome stances, and a chemical waste disposal point. Applications. Now you can see there the car park in development. It did stop when COVID happened. It started prior to COVID, but was delayed during 2020. And then it was completed in early 2021, and we're now providing, it's a small facility, but it complements other motorhome locations around the west of Mull and other parts of Mull, and it's proving to be very successful. A chemical waste disposal point as well, which is available for all. And Matthew's hand-carved signs, which complement all the the other signs that we have funding for. So the various plans for the shore facilities building altered over the course of the COVID period, earlier COVID period. Obviously funding was difficult to secure, and the building was phased down, or sorry, scaled down, and then scaled back up again. So now in 2021, these are our latest plans, which is quite a compromise. It has a small multifunction space for community and visitors. So really this is quite a holistic building, providing facilities for all, obviously not just the visiting boats, but for the community, the many people that are visiting the National Scenic Area. The fishermen also have a drying area. So really it's a completely multifunction space. And this appealed to the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund. And finally, after many attempts at applying for funding over the past 3 years, our application has been successful. So we have potentially the majority of our funding in place. We've been awarded the funding, just waiting for the paperwork to come through. We haven't, we still need to complete the funding package, and we have a couple of other outstanding applications that we're waiting for the results of. All going well, we'll finalise the development work, and building can commence in the autumn 22 for hopefully opening in the summer of 2023. And that's the layout that's been finalised, a couple of showers, kitchenette, laundry, a drying area for fishermen, publicly accessible toilets are available all day. Otherwise, it's key fob to get into the main area for the motorhomers, for the pontoon users, and all others, and the community, of course. It'll provide a vital role for Ulva residents and Gomitra residents, particularly in the winter time when ferries are often cancelled or delayed, and children commuting to school, etc. They don't have to shelter in cars or behind buildings anymore. They can actually have a safe space to stay for however long. it's another view. Oops, a bit too fast there. From an artist impression, it's a small building. So it's a small building, but it hopefully will provide, you know, a wide variety of facilities. It will complement some of the other projects in the area, and it'll help improve the resilience and sustainability of the Ulva Ferry area. MICT itself has brought in over £3.5 million into the area with its Ulva Ferry projects in the last 10 years. And now working with Northwest Mull Community Woodland Company, who are developing all sorts of exciting developments in Mull, on Ulva, sorry. It's a very exciting time for this area. And finally, there's now 19 children, I believe at the last count, in the Ulva Primary School, and much of that has been down to due to the MICT housing project and its development of 6 affordable houses in the area. So I think that's all sort of overrun, but I think that's all I wanted to say. Hopefully there's some questions later on. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kelly. That was great, and looking forward to seeing the developments next time. I'm obviously in the pontoon many times, but it's great to see the site continuing to develop.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'll move on now to the other end of Mull. We're gradually getting further south in Mull, so we're now going to move on to Morven Gibson from Southwest Mull and Iona Development, who started out buying a community forest but have since moved on to a marine development. So over to you now, Morven.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so as Lindsay said, I'm Morven Gibson and I'm General Manager for Southwest Mull and Iona Development. We're a company limited by guarantee, and as it says in the tin, we cover the area of the southwest of Mull and the island of Iona. We became incorporated in 2014 and in advance of buying a 763 hectare forest on behalf of our community. So as the slide says, our aim is about supporting a thriving and resilient community. We're community led and community owned, and we have a community plan which drives the projects we undertake, and was formed through listening to the needs and aspirations of our community. We consult regularly to ensure that our community are happy that we're developing things in line with their wishes and their needs. So our vision centres around 4 areas. It centres around people. So we want our area to be home to a diverse range of people and a balanced demographic. Home, we think that people should have access to the housing which they need. Economy, we want to help to create a wide range of year-round jobs and business opportunities. And for example, SMID has gone from 1 employee, which was just me in 2014, to 7 employees in 6 years. And we also have up to 10 subcontractors that we provide work for as well. And finally, the environment. We recognise the importance of the natural environment, both to well-being, but also to local economy. And we are pushing ourselves all the time to reduce our carbon footprint. Got a range of projects that we work on. I'll mention Tyrone Community Forest, which we bought through funding with from the Scottish Land Fund, and the Columbus Centre. We lease that from Historic Environment Scotland and provide retail space, space for a community gym, and office space, including our own offices as well. We bought Bendoran, which used to be an old boatyard site. We bought that back in 2018, again with funding from Scottish Land Fund, and that's where our shoreside facilities, the seaweed farm, will go. And finally, Eardfada Seaweed Farm, which is the big thing we're doing at the moment, and I'm going to actually talk about that further in this presentation. So why seaweed farming? Well, as you can see, the aim was to create a financially viable, environmentally sustainable and socially beneficial seaweed business. That was what was driving us. We saw it as a way forward of working towards our goals, particularly surrounding people in place in terms of sustainable community benefits. We've already created 1 new full-time post, and we've provided opportunity for our local fishing fleet, which is also important to us. We're also creating a business that is environmentally sustainable. The seaweed farm crop doesn't require any fertilisers or chemicals or fresh water. And we're only harvesting the crop that we've actually put in the sea ourselves. The site at Bendoran, it was a great acquisition. It's close to the sea, and access to the sea is also very important for a seaweed farm. It used to be a really important resource in the community. It was a boatyard, and then it was sold, and the new owners turned it from an industrial site into a site for holiday accommodation. And as a community, we've bought it back, and we're again turning it back into a site that's going to create a local benefit. It will house the shoreside facilities for the seaweed farm, but it also, at the moment, we've got a water sports social enterprise that runs from it too. And the water sports social enterprise works in a way that visitors to the island will pay a commercial rate for activities, but locals join a club and get all these activities at a very, very, very nominal fee. It's really good. There are market opportunities around seaweed, and I think in the coming years we're going to see the seaweed industry really develop. There's lots of opportunity to work towards net zero in terms of biorefinery products, bioplastics, and also a lot of exciting opportunities around the food industry and also in terms of animal feed as well. So how did it happen? Well, I think the main thing and the main thing that made it happen was collaboration. We've collaborated with a range of different people, agencies and organisations who have all helped us along the way, and we wouldn't have managed it really without them. We got funding from Highlands Enterprise at the beginning, and when I say the beginning, we've been working at this for about 4 or 5 years now since the idea kind of took root and to now actually having a farm in the water. High funded the feasibility study and options appraisal, which was done by SAMS, the Scottish Association for Marine Science, and Delfinity Limited. And they kind of looked at various options, but one of the key things was that SAMS identified 5 sites in the local area for us that would be suitable for growing seaweed. So we got help from Argyll Aquaculture Consultants. They're still working with us. Well, as I say, it's a one-man band, Stevie, and he's great and really interested in the project and keen to help us. And also Inverlussa Marine Services. Now, Inverlussa is a mussel farm locally, but also they have a large marine services company, and their help was really really beneficial for us. They helped Argyll Aquaculture design the site, so it was looking at ways that they could design it to create optimal growth for us, and having that local company with us throughout the way was really key. Engagement, and I think this is one that's really close to my own heart because our fishing fleet contribute a lot to our local community. We had a site chosen from the 5 that SAMS had given us as options, and when we went to our fishermen, we said, what do you think of this one? And they said it's actually over really good creel fishing ground. We'd rather you didn't put it there. And we then went back to them and said, that's fine, we won't. There was no really big discussion. We just knew that we didn't want to create this new industry at the detriment of an existing one. And so we let the fishermen choose the site they like best from the other 4 that were proposed. And I think that's been a key thing, and that trust and that working together has been really important in the development of the site. We also obviously got funding to put the farm in. We got funding from the EMFF and also a private investor, and that money covered the 100,000 that it took to put in the farm, and also working capital for the first year. We've had to work with the Crown Estate Scotland to get the lease of the seabed to put the farm on, and also we got our marine licence from Marine Scotland to enable us to actually operate the farm. And now we have, I'm saying one of the biggest there, it is the biggest seaweed farm in the UK, and the best thing about it is that it's under community ownership. So how it works, so you'll see from the picture that it's 6 hectares in size, and it's split into 3 2-hectare rectangles. So we've put out, this farm could have 30 kilometres of seeded line put on it, but we've put out 6 this year. I say we've started small, but actually 6 kilometres of seeded line is the biggest deployment of seeded line ever in Scotland in one go. So we've been quite ambitious about what we've aimed for. We've put out Saccharine nillatissima, which is sugar kelp. It was deployed over 2 weeks, and it was 1 day per week. So 3 kilometres 1 week, 3 kilometres next week. We had 6 people helping, a local fishing boat and a rib, and the people were made up of kind of folk we'd contracted from the local fishing community as well. One section of our site is leased to another individual, not for money, but in return for skills and help. This person's a diver, they've worked in aquaculture and fishing, and so they've been helping us with kind of technical aspects of maintaining the site so far and keeping an eye on the growth. We have fortnightly checks and assessments, and it shows that our seaweed is actually growing really well, which is good. So we're looking at a bumper harvest, which makes me happy and nervous all at the same time. We hope to harvest the crop in April and May. And one of the key things is that in November, we got money from the graduate placement programme through High in the Scottish Government to fund a graduate placement. And we got a local woman, Lee, who's helping us, and she's been an amazing asset and is looking at all the operational side of things at the moment. So what are the opportunities? Well, we've obviously got 30 tonnes of sugar kelp, which is grown in pristine Scottish waters. And that is an opportunity in itself to have that crop. It's a community-owned business, so one day we will be making profits, and that will either be reinvested back into the community. Creating employment, already created a job, and also the sort of boost to the fishing community. And I think that the boost to the fishing community, I'm saying boost to the fishing community, but I feel that we're the ones that have been boosted, to be honest, because we've had support and access to boats, and most importantly, access to experienced skippers. Nobody knows our waters like our local fishermen, and so that has been a major help for us. And the learning, we're learning something new. This very entrepreneurial project, the first year has been a bit shaky at times, and we've come up against lots of challenges, and it hasn't always gone smoothly, but we're always learning, always improving, and also trying to find our own way in this new industry. So the challenges, our immediate challenge is that we had intended to sell our crop wet so that we wouldn't have to put processing facilities in this year. We would do that next year. Our buyers sort of changed their mind in terms of what they needed from us. And so we have had to pivot really quickly and try to find a way of getting processing facilities on site this year, which was always the goal. Well, it was always the goal to get them in, but maybe not this year. But we're dealing with that now. And we're going to be putting in freezing and drying facilities, hopefully in the next month or so. Time and money are major challenges, but I know that most people in the room will appreciate what that time and money are like with community projects. So I really just want to sort of come to my closing thoughts here, and I think with I was like keeping an eye on what was going on with COP26, and there was always lots of chat and discussions in the media about what had been agreed and what was being said. But I think the key thing for me and many others is that Indigenous peoples across the world didn't really have a seat at the table. And that's what we'd been hearing. But I believe that the seaweed industry in Scotland is a chance to kickstart something new where local people can be fully embedded from the start. Whether that's a community trust, a local private business, or a local individual. But my point is that as industry grows and becomes more profitable, and I believe it will, we need to ensure that as much of that stays in communities as possible. So let's have a seaweed industry being an example of one which isn't doing to communities, but is driven by communities. That was a bit rushed through, but thanks for listening to me.
Thanks, Morven. That was really interesting, and interesting to hear how you might be doing things differently as a community landowner compared to how you might do it as a private business. We're now open for Q&As. If anyone wants to put a Q&A in the question box, and can I invite all of our speakers to turn their cameras on, because I'm about to start asking them some questions while we wait for Q&As to come in. So one thing that was really obvious listening to all of your presentations was how technical all of these developments are, and the level of kind of expertise that is required. I think in our audience today, we've got quite a few people that might be looking to dip their toe in the water, possibly literally and metaphorically, when it comes to pontoons and so on. So it'd be really good to hear from you about how you found kind of moving into this area. did you find it easy to get technical advice, and have your own heads become full of everything that you need to know about pontoons, harbours and seaweed? So I'll start with you first, Morven.
Sorry, can you just repeat that again, Lindsay? Just
how did you find it when you kind of started out in this area? Was it easy to get kind of technical advice that you need and so on? Because it is quite, all of these presentations today, you know, require a lot of technical information.
I suppose it was. I mean, we were approached by a member of the community who said, have you ever thought about seaweed farming? And it came about round about kind of looking at sites locally and stuff and what we could use them for. But the thing about the seaweed industry, because it's new, people are genuinely trying to help each other to, you know, kick things off. And so, yeah, I found it quite easy to get technical advice in terms of knowledge from other people. So we've got good relationship with SAMs, we've got good relationship with other seaweed farmers and prospective seaweed farmers. And I think the key to that is always being open and sharing information. I know that you and Scott from Barra's in this call today, so him and I have talked a lot, and he's always up for talking through stuff. And I think that that's similar to most other people in the industry. I think though it is a huge undertaking, and for me the challenges have come since we've actually put it in the water, learning the practical stuff on the ground and moving with that.
Things you never thought you might one day know. Callie and Murray, can I ask the same of you? How much did you have to learn about building and running a pontoon and about waves and that kind of thing?
Oh, you're on mute, Murray.
Yeah, one of the most common phrases that we used at the beginning was "you don't know what you don't know," and it's quite scary how many things creep out of the woodwork. You know that you need a Crown Estate license for any moorings on the seabed. You need a Marine Scotland license for anything that's on the surface. You need planning consent. So there's a whole range of things which you have to do when you're below the high water mark that you don't have to do on land. So it's a whole new ball game to get involved in a marine project like this.
I think also can add that we spent quite a bit of time visiting other community pontoons and other pontoons, Tobermory and some of the other smaller ones, and I found it helpful speaking to the other local development officers. We had a network within HIE at the time that HIE had part funded, which I'm not sure if it is quite so active now, but that was extremely beneficial, and other LDOs had sent some of their plans through and some of their early research from their projects. So that was extremely beneficial. And I think actually did an overseas tour of pontoons. It was funded by Visit Scotland, or a part of there, and that again was extremely helpful to look at all the small projects, similar projects overseas in Sweden, actually it was, which was extremely useful.
Thanks, Callie and Murray. And there's still funding available through Scottish Community Alliance. Give them a plug for study visits. So if you're interested, if anyone on the call is interested in going to see another community who's doing this kind of thing, let us know and we can help you access funding for that. So on to you, Brian. It seems like you've been in this game for a long time, but you're continuously taking on new things. So how full is your head of technical information?
I seem to have been here forever, as anyone knows, right? And I am trying to get an exit strategy, and we're working on it slowly. We're working it through, but there's always new projects, as you all say, right? I mean, the real essence of it all was from the very beginning. It was built, you know, do you justify what you're going to build through all kinds of reports and projects and goodness knows what else, or do you build it and they will come? And if we go back to the very beginning and we look at what we did in early work with the Crown Estate in doing this joining up of ports and harbours, and that's Loch Allen to Tobermory and round to Ulva Ferry and maybe on to Beneston in the future, or out to Col and Tyree, and then on to multiple ports, obviously up to the north. I mean, that necklace, that chain, that stepping stone of harbours was a forethought that we always had with the Crown Estate. We worked heavily with them in the beginning and have worked with them continuously ever since, right? And here it was an opportunity of build it and they will come. I mean, everybody knew that the yachts were there. They knew how many moorings there were. They knew how many boats were moving around. And they knew that the movement was from anchoring up to moving into pontoons. So there was a risk, obviously, in anything that you do. And it's lovely to see what others have done to build things as well, because I'm still a bit of a believer in build it and they will come. Okay,
thank you, Brian. Questions are starting to come in now. So our first question is from Adam Pillett for Morven. I think this is a very live issue for you, Morven. He's wondering about the buyer that you mentioned. Are you going for a single buyer who'll take all the produce? And if you are, is it corporate bio-industry type or more food-based?
Hi, Adam. So it's a good question and one that we're asking ourselves all the time at the minute. We had originally planned to sell all of our crop, which we hope to get about 33 tonnes of seaweed, of sugar kelp, to a biorefinery business who are going to take it wet. Since they changed their requirements, and to be fair to them, we're all learning. So they learned stuff last year before they sort of made before we had the discussions about it going wet, and decided that they would actually rather have it in a different format. They want it frozen and a bit less. So we're talking to them at the moment, and then we've also got another conversation happening with a food provider who are interested in buying from us. And the third thing we're thinking about is the cattle feed sector, and that's more in terms of like a carbon innovation project. And so like there's lots of exciting things happening around that. We hope that within 2 weeks' time we'll know what we're doing. We've got 3 really big conversations happening over the next couple of weeks. I don't think it will all be sold to one customer. I think it's going to be some kind of combination of 2, if not all 3. But once we sort of know what's happening, it will probably be going up on our website and stuff. So keep an eye on it. Or if you want to contact me directly, I'd be quite happy to talk through what happens.
Thanks, Morven. The next question is for Brian from Neil McKinnon. What type of partners and suppliers are needed for operating the harbour services and meeting the health and safety requirements in particular?
What partners was that the question?
Partners and suppliers.
Yes, I mean, well, we've actually got within the Harbour Authority, we've got a team, a marine team, which is a harbour master and a harbour master's assistant, and then another assistant during the summer for working on everything that's going on. The harbour master does all the plans and all the safety and risk management systems and all the port marine safety. But we also have a designated person, what they call a DP. And our DP actually represents a number of ports. I think he represents Tarbert as well, and he represents ports on the East Coast. And he comes in and gives us any advice. And if we have real advice, and some of the problems that we're wrestling with is actually pilotage. I mean, the MCA have asked Tobermory, would they look at doing pilotage for bringing large cruise liners into Tobermory? Now, the cost of that would be, for a small community business like ours, absolutely astronomical. You would need a boat, you would need crew, you would need pilots. And I mean, it's absolutely off the scale. So there are ways around that. Bigger boats anchor off and they bring the passengers in on their own Liberty boats and things like that. So we have to work not creatively, but within the letter of the law, obviously, and within safety guidelines. And we've put up a passenger landing pontoon and places where we can isolate passengers coming ashore, because we have to have security safety, we have to have fencing, we have to have all the people checked in and all the people checked out. And this is what goes on with, obviously, cruise liners. Cruise liners, you don't just put them in the bay and leave them to get on with it. You've got to look after them. So yes, there are all kinds of problems. And the MCA can also be helpful as well. We've talked to the MCA, we've had visits from the MCA, and we will talk to them. We'll also talk with our stakeholders. We'll talk to the RNLI, we'll talk to our Coast Guard representatives on what we call the port user group meetings, the pub meetings. So it's all about engaging with the community and with the fishermen. We've got a slight decline in the fishing industry in Tobermory at the moment, whereas we had quite a few boats a few years ago. We're right down to about 4 boats, actually, again, the pier that belonged to Tobermory, and the revenue into the community from fishing has gone right down, and we're seeing how we can actually help that, whether it's a slight diversification into aquaculture or it's whether it's reinvestment in new boats for the boys, but they are obviously struggling to get grounds at the moment. And I'm not going to do anything political between the green agenda and the fishing agenda, but it is very difficult for our local fishermen at present.
Thanks, Brian. We have a question from Bertie Russell for you, Morven. Were there any specific challenges that you faced as a community business when trying to get a licence? And is the Crown Estate the current owner of the seabed? Are there any prospects for the ownership to be transferred to the community business?
So in terms of, we'll start with Marine Scotland first with getting our licence. It proved, it took a very long time. It was, we were lucky because we had Argyll Aquaculture working with us, and who charged a kind of, as a consultant, charged a really fair price, because in the last few years, it used to be very easy to get a licence for a seaweed farm because not really anybody was doing it. But now Marine Scotland are kind of creating more and more sort of reports and stuff that you have to provide, which is fine. It's really important that things are done properly and that it's not at the detriment of the environment or other businesses or whatever. But it did take a long time in terms of the extra things that we had to provide, and it cost money. I think as well that Marine Scotland and quite a lot of government agencies are the same, is that they suffered with the COVID move to working from home much more than I think the community sector did, to be honest. Things like lack of mobile phones for the Marine Scotland team meant that you were waiting 10 days to get a reply to emails. You got the same blanket response every time you contacted them. You know, but I mean, that's just, I guess that's just one of the outcomes of the pandemic. However, we got our licence in the end, and it was fine. In terms of the Crown Estate, Crown Estate Scotland, I found them really easy to deal with. I don't know if Brian or Murray or Callie have got the same experience, but I found Crown Estate excellent, to be honest. They were really helpful. It was all quite easy, and we now have a lease where we pay £135 a year. In terms of the whole community ownership of the seabed, because yes, they do own it, I'd be really, really interested. It's always in the back of my mind to look into that. You know, could we actually have that chunk of seabed? Because it'd be quite an interesting thing to look into. But my head's full of everything else at the moment. So once things settle down, that'll probably be the next thing for the investigation.
Can I just come in there, actually, on the Crown Estate, on that very one, actually, there are opportunities at present. You know, and they have been trying to talk to Tobermory Harbour. We're not sure that the first tranche of money that they wanted to rent the bay was quite a large tranche, actually, of, you know, for the Crown Estate, for us to take devolved responsibility for the seabed. And so any money that you have to pay would have to be matched against the income, obviously, and fingers crossed it does very well, Morven, and fingers crossed his income, because the opportunity to actually acquire that seabed, I think, is there at the moment. I think it is there now. Yes.
Thank you.
Quite a few of our members of Community Land Scotland have acquired a foreshore from Crown Estate Scotland, but seabed is a new area, so that's going to be interesting one to watch. I think we're at the end of all of our questions now. If anyone goes away and they have a burning question they want to ask, they can pass it on to everyone who's been speaking today, and hopefully they'll be able to answer it. I think today has really shown what a massive difference marine assets are making to the economy of Mull. And I think at Community Land Scotland, something like 3/4 of our members are on the coast. So there's lots of potential out there for communities to be developing more marine assets. I'd like to say a massive thank you to our speakers today. It's been really, really interesting. I've learned a lot myself today, and we'll hopefully have this webinar up on our YouTube channel next week for anyone who wants to watch it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.